Good. Okay, thanks for inviting this talk to the HSSS. I'm David Ng, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Stephen Davies, who was the instructor for the course. So we're going to talk about refreshing a curriculum. The course is called Understanding Systems. It's a course in system thinking and social system designing. It's in the graduate program of the Strategic Foresight Innovation Master's Program at OCAD University in Toronto. So here's the agenda. First thing I'm going to talk about, give an introduction, because there's a long history of, since 2009, this course has been offered. This is the 15th offering of the Understanding Systems course. I'll talk about the approach, which is a contextual appreciative learning approach, and that takes a little bit of explanation. I'll go through the 5 steps of the approach, which is recontextualizing, which is what influences might we attend to since we're changing a course. Discerning, why is a factor now drawing attention? Then optioning, what priorities are to be weighed. Adapting, when and where can changes be introduced. And then retrospecting, what experiences contribute to learning. And we're coming around again in a month or so. We'll be looking to redo the course again. So the Understanding Systems course has been core to the Master of Strategic Foresight and Innovation program since 2019. The original statement was an integration of design, business, and futures thinking through systems thinking. And what they do is system thinking and mapping allows the complex challenges, makes clearer the patterns and interconnectedness of the issues. So this is not just system thinking, but is visual thinking, because there is more effective communication of the data that could happen. The history of the course is started in 2009 with the Social Systems course, and it got folded into Understanding Systems. So this is way back in 2009. There were 2 courses, and that eventually changed so that it became 1 course. So let's talk about how we'll approach and think about the actual change of the course. So we have this approach called Contextural Appreciative Learning, which is a combination of Inquiring Systems, Appreciative Systems, and Action Research. We start with Recontextualizing, and this is part of the Inquiring Systems approach, Singerian Inquiring Systems approach from West Churchman. We want to sweep in, revisiting the framing of the system of interest, responding to both anticipated and unanticipated shifts and other influences. This is an add-on to the action research type approach, which tends to be a little more inwardly focusing, but there are things outside the system that are happening. So this is closer to the socio-ecological systems approach that Eric Trist had worked on. Secondly, the next 3 steps are related to the Appreciative Systems approach from Sir Jeffrey Vickers. The first one is Discerning, which is associated with reality judgments about the state of the system, judging on facts both through internal consistency and external validity. In this day and age of misinformation, discerning is actually important, and figuring what the reality is, because you don't want to be moving forward when you're working on bad data or a bad understanding of the situation. Optioning relates to value judgments, consideration of the priorities weighed, resulting in selection or deselection. So there are various choices that can be made, and in a course, certainly in 13 weeks, we had to make choices about what we could do and what we couldn't do. Adapting, instrumental judgment, willful action or patience, or the natural unfolding processes exhibited. So during the course, it's not like we just set the course in stone and then move forward. We actually were adapting during the course. The retrospecting part is familiar to everyone who's done action research, where you're evaluating, collecting the results of the consequences of adaptive action, specifying the learnings, identify the findings that can become the inputs to the next cycle. So this is the history of the course from winter 2010 to winter 2015 to 2018 to winter 2020 to winter 2025. I also tried to figure out why in 2015 there is actually an extra week. There's more time in there. But the course has changed over time. From 2009, actually 2010 is probably a better starting point, because it's has been stability through that. There's been the advent or the rise of systemic design. And so Peter Jones was the one that founded the course. He's actually gone part-time at OCAD University, and he's now teaching primarily at Tec Monterrey in Mexico. But Peter took the course from 2009 all the way up until the recent years. He also, in recent years, has switched a little bit for Design for Health, but this is how the courses have evolved over time. So the question would be, without altering the course description, which usually at universities is a big job, we have the choice of either doing minor increments to legacy, or we could take the opportunity to restructure all the content. The nature of the course had evolved since the beginning, so they changed the way the courses were counted, but this is half a credit in a 9-credit program. So in the master's program, you need 9 credits. It's only half, so it's not that big. In 2009, it was part-time students with classes on Thursdays and Fridays. In 2013, there were 22 students, and 22 they're full part-time students should be. They were all part-time. In 2019-2020, there was an influx of international students, and there became a lot of people in a full-time program. So in 2025, we had 24 part-time and 17 part-time people. We had COVID in the middle. In 2019, Jeremy Bowes and Peter Jones taught the course. In 2020, I actually came into the course. In the 13 weeks, we managed to get 10 weeks completed before COVID hit. Lorraine Randall took on the course for a while, and then in 2025, Stephen Davies took over and led the course, and I was serving as a volunteer. Now, the reality around trying to change a course is that resources for the university remain tight. Of the 22 publicly funded universities, 10 are operating at a budget deficit. OCAD is one of them. Compared nationally, Ontario government provides 57% of the average per student provincial funding, so it's not great. If you want to compare it to other art schools, OCAD University gets $7,200 a student. Emily Carr gets double that, and even Nova Scotia in the Art and Design School get quite a bit more than we do. So this is not a program where there's a lot of energy or impetus to actually restructure the course. Okay, so why should we actually think about restructuring the course at all? So we traditionally had a broad range of alternative approaches, and then the end of the course has the visual design of synthesis maps, and the course is really known for synthesis maps. So contemporary systems research has incurred multi-methodology, and when I was doing informal interviews last summer, I asked some alumni, what do you remember from the course? And they said, okay, I remember causal loop diagrams, remember leverage points, and that was it. Now, this is also part of my criticism of rethinking system thinking that we're frozen in the 1980s, and we could bring up to date, particularly with the work, recent publication by Michael C. Jackson, have authentic system thinking approaches that recognize a variety of perspectives and methods that embrace pluralism. When you do the defining of system interest, you get a boundary critique, and the uniqueness of the situation and or the intervention may lead to a multi-methodological approach. Also, systemic design has evolved with the Relating System Thinking and Design Conference, which is actually happening this week and next week in Toronto. The change in design thinking has moved from Design 1.0 to Design 4.0, where we're not looking at products and services anymore. We're looking at communities. The first RSD symposium happened in 2012. We had the RSD4, the Systemic Design book. 2018, it was incorporated into the Systemic Design Association. Synthesis maps got published. In addition, in 2023, the Design Council in the UK published a framework for innovation and the Systemic Design Toolkit. With this, we also have a strong system thinking community in Toronto. We've had System Thinking Ontario that has monthly meetings since 2012. OCAD U has been hosting it. We had participants from OCAD U and York University who are also in Toronto. And traditionally, the SFI students have presented their synthesis maps in the summer. So, options. What are the priorities? There's an introductory course of 13 weeks. There's a reading week midway through the course. There's a capstone synthesis cap at the end. Now, one of the challenges was that we'd actually like to teach systems methods through the whole course, through the whole 13 weeks, but we actually required interim grading. And so what we decided was to do the systems foundations, emphasize the articles, and sequence them earlier in the course, and then do the systemic design toolkit later. The approach that we were trying to do was have a focus on work products. So firstly, have people focus on the artifacts they create. Secondly, do the methods. And thirdly, have theory and history as supplemental. In weeks 2 to 5, we did idealized design, system dynamics, soft systems methodology, viable systems model, and we also introduced people to the System Thinkers book by Ramaj and Ship. Week 8, we get into systemic design, introduction to systems synthesis mapping, because by week 13 they need to complete a synthesis map, and so this is the earliest we could get them in, which is actually 1 or 2 weeks earlier than they normally have done in the course. Week 9, we do critical systems practice to bring us up to date with Michael Jackson's work. Week 10, we do system changes learning, which is the research work that we've been doing since 2019 in Toronto. And week 11, we did language action perspective. Now, we squeezed out resilience and panarchy, which hurt a lot, and I'll talk a little bit more about trying to bring that back later. There's also studio time in the course, presentations, and reflection papers. Now, the graduate students were learning as peers, and we had them do group method talks. This is an inverted classroom approach, teams of 3 to 5 individuals. We had 4 groups in the full-time cohort. They had 6 groups in the part-time section. The ideal talk would have been 1, what's a system of interest? Give an example. 2, say what the typical artifacts are. 3, say what the methods apply are, and then go into the theoretical foundations, and if there's time, we might do history. But the emphasis is really on trying to create those visual artifacts that contribute towards a synthesis map. The question about generative AI was actually taught in the second week, and we suggested try learning with generative AI as an experiment. It's not a requirement. Not all students need to do it, but try it because it could work for you or it might not work for you. So I did the review, lectured ChatGPT, Copilot, LeChat, Claude, Notebook LM, Perplexity, and so the idea was to give students the range of generative AI tools available and have them select from that whatever they found appropriate. Okay, adapting during the course. Now, students have this disadvantage. They take the course only once. So it's only the instructors that can observe the improvements and disappointments as the plans actually become outcome. So we set clearly that this is a course in transition. We're open about the 2025 course as being discontinuous from the prior trajectory because all the systems content was at the front end as opposed to being dispersed through. And we were, as instructors, were serving more as facilitators and guides. We would fall back, particularly when the students were doing their method talks. We could rely on us as subject matter experts for details. We don't expect students to be experts, but they should be able to do presentations on the basic ideas of the system topic that they're covered. We advised the students not to read too far ahead because we were changing the reading list as we figured out what they were doing, what we were learning along the way. And we had options for summarizations via generative AI. We also had a RAG, had fewer hallucinations as an alternative. So we were experimenting with generative AI in the classroom. The method talks would vary on emphasis. The prep time that we set as expectation of 3 to 6 hours. The full-time and part-time sections might surface different points, and so we don't expect that student groups working are going to have exactly the same presentation in both, and we were on hand to guide or redirect the class discussion. The examples that they use could either be ephemeral, just for the examples so people can understand what's going on and they could take it from the readings, or provisional in that some of them were already starting to work on the synthesis map. They also have other courses in parallel where they're doing it. So the reason for making it, for having the examples, is it makes the systems concepts more accessible. If you have examples, metaphors, or studies. The system of interest could align with the anticipated synthesis maps or not. Some students actually got tired of working on what the system of interest would be, and they would switch. And they could reuse preliminary research from the parallel classes in progress and gain some scale. Other students say, oh, we actually don't want to do that. We feel that's covered too much already. Okay, so retrospecting. What did we learn about it? So we had a survey at the end. 54% of part-time students responded, 65% of full-time students responded. The course pace, 50% said fast. It is a course that was 2 courses, is now 1 course, so fast is not bad. Course difficulty compared to others, it's a difficult course they found, which is like, okay, yes, if you're going through system thinking at a fairly quick pace, it's going to be a lot. And course workload was actually average, which is interesting. So it's difficult but average weight, which means that, to me, they're getting it over time, and they're not overloaded with it. Students appreciated systems. So these are some quotes from the surveys. It's a new way of viewing the world, thinking more critically about interconnectivity of things, a disciplined approach to continuous learning, the cheat code for life. We had one opinion, which is we appreciate that students do instruction. The others, though, we had another one who said do not have the students present the material. So you get some people that like and some people don't. The methodological approach is more practical compared to just learning theory, and the focus on methodology is incredibly helpful for my development as a designer. And these students are design students at the master's level, so this is a design program at OCAD University. AI was mostly welcomed. A student said it liked keeping up with the times by embracing AI. Using AI to summarize readings is really good before reading the whole text. It's a great tool, especially for non-English speaking students. This turned out to be a really interesting proposition because we had some Chinese students in the course. Chinese is the first language, English is the second language. And we know that the articles are difficult in English. So what the students were doing was taking them and putting them through AI, getting them translated into Chinese. And what they thought was, well, if I'm getting less than 90% of the content in English, how much would the 10% error be if I put it into Chinese to understand that better? So AI is for summarizing and getting the gist of an article is a good idea. That doesn't mean you don't read the full article, but when you're trying to get through a content, sometimes it's helpful to get the big picture. I use Gen AI reluctantly. It did not change my attitude, so some people didn't like it. And don't rely on it to do your work for you, which is a good expectation. The content sequencing and focusing could be improved. We did week 11, conversation for design, and we should have done it in week 1. There's an opportunity, and we'll revise the course. We're going to move it up to the first week because understanding the commitments within a team helps on the team working together. We had some breakdowns later, and then it's like, oh, we didn't teach them how to renegotiate their commitments. We need to open up a week for panarchy and social ecological systems. And I will take fault as the instructor about articulating the sequencing and methods talk on articles first because I didn't do that myself. This year when I write the lecture, I'll make sure to do that because then students can actually get a better idea of what I'm thinking because they can follow that example. Okay. In winter, for winter 2026 is coming. In August, here are the indicators about how things will have changed. So we can't assume that we just did the course and we just changed just from what we do inside the course. The applications and admissions of graduate students to OCAD U is down. There may only be one section of understanding systems as opposed to 2 sections. That's still up for grabs, but currently there's only one listed. There's also a movement towards greater uniformity across OCAD graduate studies. SFI is only one program within graduate studies, and they all have different number of credits. So there's been some work towards that. There's continuing financial pressures from unchanging provincial funding, so more money is not coming. And we have uncertainties in the Canadian economy due to tariffs in the USA. So when we're rethinking the course, the question that will probably be the one that impacts us most will be if there's one large class opposed to 2 small classes, how will we handle that? Will the course be different? So this is the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to take questions and comments.
are there any questions for David? I can see one question in the chat by Mrs. Karinotaki saying, have you considered utilizing synthetic AI personas to contextualize the use of Gen AI in the courses?
If you would like to ask that question more detail, I think that requires some unpacking. So I'm using Gen AI a lot for my research. Now the question as to whether students should or shouldn't do that and how they do it, this is not a course for generative AI. It's a course for systems and designing. So the question about how much we can teach that and how much the university can take hold of that is interesting. One of the things, as an example, was that the current policy was that students should be using Copilot because OCAD U is a subscriber to Microsoft. And so I checked, and one reason for using a Microsoft Copilot is that it's unlimited. You don't have to pay extra for it. And so that's good. But you can also use Notebook LM, which is really good for summarizing articles, and students did that, and some found it helpful.
Okay, Mrs. Karinotaki, would you like to press your spacebar and
Sure, yeah, I can give a bit more context because, yeah, so basically synthetic AI personas is you training a persona, an AI persona, with specific data to help in a specific field. So to help out students more, perhaps the Gen AI as Gen AI would either give too vague of an answer or like take it to a completely different area, whereas a synthetic AI persona would be staying to the point all the time and being there as a lesson helper, let's say. So you would feed it the relevant literature review and it would help the students with the course respectively of whatever was fed.
Okay, so there's two things. One is that I was actually running a RAG myself. So this is I had a RAG with all the content that has been published since 2008 because I blog a lot, and so students could ask that, but they didn't use it, which is interesting. I don't know why they don't use it, but there's also a lot of content from outside the course that I have that is not in the course. Now, if students are going to, in effect, they create their own what you would call synthetic persona by taking their content, the readings, and putting them into Notebook LM. They can do that themselves, but again, it's a choice. And so students were offered the choice to do it or not do it, and it was up to them. We don't have a full university policy on generative AI except for around plagiarism. So the university is not quite there yet. We're actually ahead of the university.
Okay. Makes sense. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, David. So.